Greetings from Poland. I just greet you from Jerusalem. Behind me you see beautiful green Mount Zion on this very nice day. I would love to be with you, but since I'm not, this is the best spot I could think of. I love the theme of this conference, which is faith over fear. And I thought about the three things that we fear the most: the unknown, fear of pain, and fear of loss. And I want to talk today about, briefly, about the fear of the unknown and look at three people in the Bible who handle the unknown in really great ways that I think will encourage us. The first let me say that we are in a time of great unknowns. We don't know how long COVID will last. We don't know what will be tomorrow. We don't know what will change tomorrow. We don't know when we can travel. We don't know where and when we can go somewhere. So we are in a time of great unknown. But I think when we see these men and women in the Bible, we'll really be strengthened by how they functioned. The first one is Abraham, who grew up in southeast Turkey, what's today southeast Turkey. It's a place called Haran. And when Abraham was 75 years old, God spoke to him and said, I want you to leave. I want you to leave your family. I want you to leave everything you know, everything familiar, and I want you and your wife to go to a place where I will show you. And there I will make you a great nation. Now, it's very hard to move to a new country when you're 25 years old, and when you're 35 years old, and when you're 50 years old. But when you're 75 years old, and we don't have travel books to show us what it's going to be like, that's very, very hard, but Abraham did it. And this is what Hebrews said about him. Hebrews 11. By faith, Abraham, when called to go to a place he would later receive as his inheritance, obeyed and went, even though he did not know where he was going. By faith, he made his home in the promised land, like a stranger in a foreign country. He lived in tents, as did Isaac and Jacob, who were heirs with him of the same promise. For he was looking forward to the city with foundations, whose architect and builder is God. Doesn't that sound like us today, that we are strangers in a foreign land? Some days I wake up and I think, where am I? This is not normal. This is foreign. Nothing's right about today, but that's how Abraham lived. And he was 75, and he started new, and he had to live in a tent. And 24 years later, an angel came to Abraham and said, part two of this promise. He said, in a year, your wife will give birth to a male child. Now, Abraham was 99 years old then, but he had to wait 24 years to see what the next part of the promise was. Meanwhile, he just lived in a tent waiting. But he knew something bigger. He knew something bigger than himself. He knew something bigger than his discomfort. He knew something bigger than missing his family in Haran. He knew something bigger. He knew that God was going to do something and build a nation for him. And when we know something bigger, we can live with the discomfort of today. The second person is his wife, Sarah. Now think about Sarah. She was a bit younger. She was 65. And she did not hear from God in Haran. She heard from her husband. And he came to her one day and he said, hey, Sarah, I heard from God and we need to pack up and move. And we need to leave your family and my family and just go somewhere. Because God is going to build a great nation from us. Now that's very hard for a woman to do, especially when she's 65. And this is what Hebrews 11 says about Sarah. By faith, Sarah, who was past childbearing age, was enabled to bear children because she considered him faithful who made the promise. So 24 years later, after she got to her tent in Canaan, she heard the angel telling her husband, your wife's going to have a baby. And she knew at that point that she was 90 years old. And she knew her body was dried up and no good, and wrinkled and tired. And she just laughed. she just left. And her unknown was not just going to a new country. Her unknown was having a baby when she was 90 years old. Now, who could Sarah talk to about this? There were no other 90-year-olds or 80-year-olds that had had babies before. And she's not going to talk to a 20-year-old or a 30-year-old. And she had to watch her old, tired, weary body become pregnant with a child at 90. I mean, I'm not 90, but I can't even imagine it. It's unbelievable. And another translation of the verse I just read you a while ago is this. By faith, Sarah received strength to conceive seed. Sometimes when there's a promise like what Sarah got of having a child, it takes strength even to hold that promise. And she received strength to hold this promise the 24 years that she waited and the 9 months that she was pregnant. She received strength to carry that promise. And she must have received strength when she was 91 years old and had a 1-year-old, and 92 years old and had a 2-year-old, and 94 years old and had a 4-year-old. Can you imagine? Amazing, amazing. But like Abraham, Sarah saw something bigger than herself. When we see something bigger than herself, we can have faith to move on. And also, both of them, both Abraham and Sarah, knew that God was faithful. It was him who was faithful, not them, but he was faithful. That's what they knew, that's what they understood, and that's what they looked at. The third example is also in Hebrews 11, and that's an amazing woman named Rahab. Now, Rahab was a Canaanite woman, and she was a prostitute. She was the lowest of the low. And when Joshua, you find her in the book of Joshua, when Joshua sent 2 spies to spy out Jericho, they went straight to her house. And she obviously opened the door and let them in. Now that's a great unknown, to let 2 spies from your enemies come in. And after she let them in, she told them to go up on the roof because the king came to her, the king of Jericho, and he said, let me know if those spies get here because I want to kill them. And instead of obeying her king, she hid them. Well, that's also fearful and a great unknown, to hide spies and to disobey your own king. But this is what Sarah said to the spies. I know that the Lord has given you guys, this land, and that a great fear of you has fallen on us, so that all who live here are melting in fear because of you. Our courage failed because of you, for the Lord your God is God in heaven above and on earth below. This pagan prostitute, this lowest of the low, she knew that there was something bigger than herself. She knew there was a God that needed to be feared, and she knew that that God was faithful. And she knew that if she hid those men on her roof, that he would take care of her. And she even asked the spies to take care of her family, which they did. They negotiated that, and they did. And then it later says that she went with them, she left with them and all her family, and she married an Israelite and became one of them. So this prostitute came from this low, low life to a place of honor in Israel because she married an Israelite. She saved Israel basically by helping the spies know how to conquer Jericho. And she's listed as a hero of our faith. And she too knew that God was faithful. So sometimes when this season of great unknown, God asks us to do things that we're not comfortable with. Sarah wasn't comfortable, I'm sure. Abraham wasn't comfortable, I'm sure. Rahab wasn't comfortable, I'm sure. But because all 3 of them knew that God was faithful, they could move forward. Because our faith is just that God is faithful. It's not that we're strong, that we're mighty, that we have great faith. It's just that we know and understand that God is faithful. So I want to mention 2 things that will help us. The first thing is what I've been saying. Think of the big picture. Think of something bigger than COVID. God is obviously shaking everything that can be shaken. And what is left will be solid, will be strong, will be an anchor for our souls. Because you can't shake an anchor. Waves come, winds come, but anchors can't be shaken. And no matter how long we have to wait for a promise, it may look like COVID is delaying it, but God will fulfill his promises in your life. If you have to wait 2 years, if you have to wait 99 years, if you have to wait 24 years, God will fulfill his promises in your life because he is faithful. And the second thing to remember is to be thankful. And right now in my life, I'm just thankful for the smallest things. We just came out of a 5-week lockdown, our third one this week, and I was so thankful I could have friends over for lunch. I was so thankful I could go sit and have a cup of coffee with a friend. I'm so thankful that I have 6 people coming to dinner tonight. I'm so thankful. I'm really so thankful for something that before I might have taken for granted to sit and have a cup of coffee with someone. But now when I can do that, when I can have lunch with a friend, I'm so thankful for little things. I'm so thankful that we can go driving and look at wildflowers and not have to stay within the boundaries that the government says we have to stay in. I'm so thankful that I can even come to this room today. I couldn't come last week. I'm so thankful for small things. And when we are thankful for small things, God can do big things in our heart and increase our faith and encourage us. So I just want to bless you today. I hope you have a great conference and that the rest of this is great. And may the Lord's face shine upon you. May his peace be upon you. May he bless you. May he keep you. And I just bless you from Zion and hope that next year I can be with you. Bless you. Thank you.